can't get no rest. No, no. I've been down so long that my mind can't get no rest. No, no. This ain't easy, darling, 'cause the devil's on my trail. I've been running so long that my feet don't work no more. Oh yeah, I've been running so long that my feet don't work no more. Oh no, it ain't easy, darling, when the devil's on my trail. Oh yeah.
Welcome everyone to another edition of 6 Feet Apart with Sean and TJ. And we want to welcome our guest today, the editor of the Leader News here in Muhlenberg County, Mr. Josh Givens. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. I appreciate the offer from you guys. I've watched your interview with Mr. Davis, with the superintendent of schools, and I'm very impressed. So I'm happy to be here
A lot of information coming out on that one.
Yes.
You know, we just threw it out there and let Robbie talk. So
Yeah,
that seems to work
he's
well.
pretty good with delivering messages. So.
Yeah.
He is that.
And a lot of that is timely info that people need to hear and will continue to. So speaking of timely information, lots going on in the news. That's maybe an understatement. But,
Quite a bit.
yeah.
Quite a bit. It used to be. I've been a community journalist for quite a while now. This is actually counting my military time when I was a photojournalist. This is my 29th year. It used to be a saying that the world stopped at the county line. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
it's, you know, what happens in D.C., Frankfurt, even what happens in Beaver Dam or whatever, it impacts us here in Muhlenberg County. So you kind of have to be on your toes and find those local connections. You're always looking for a local connection, but certainly, you know, the world situation with the pandemic, it certainly has affected us here.
Yeah.
And Muhlenberg County's gotten quite a bit of attention. Unfortunately, not for entirely positive reasons, but
True.
I think the community at large has done very well. Certainly Green River Correctional Complex has been a big headline getter, as we say, but you know, that was one of those situations. I think we've seen that in nursing homes, long-term care as well. Those situations where people are close, it's hard for them to distance. They're in a residential setting. I don't know if you've ever been in prison. I have not.
No, not so far.
As a sentence, but I have
Right.
been in Green River Correctional a few times.
Taking a tour. That's as
A tour.
That's as good as I want to go. So,
So I can tell you, in those dormitory settings they have out there, you know, it would be the same if it were the flu or any other type of viral infection. It just seems that this has moved really, really quickly. I think they're on top of it now, though.
as a weekly paper, do you find yourself thinking, well, this is going to be the headline and this is what we're going to cover, and then on Monday things have changed 3 times in the last 48 hours? and
Absolutely. We are a Tuesday weekly. We publish, we usually hit the street by lunchtime on Tuesday mornings. But everything is, so basically when that paper is printed on Tuesday, we begin working on the next week. Sometimes you're working on two or three editions at one time if you have long-term projects. So Monday morning I come in, you know, I may have an idea, but then that can change by deadline time by 5 p.m. Sometimes it changes when you come in on Tuesday morning and something has happened overnight Monday. So that happens quite a bit. You have to be flexible. It's one of those, it's not a career for someone that has no flexibility in their personality.
Have you ever gotten to say stop the presses?
One time.
Oh, hey.
One time. Those things only happen though when it's something very, very serious.
Yeah.
And with social media and the internet, we do use our Facebook page quite a bit for breaking news. We try to refrain, unless it's something major, we try to refrain from putting the whole story out there at one time. But when you have a situation where there maybe is a house fire or a fatal car crash or something, certainly in conjunction with your fire departments and your police department. We don't want to release anything before they do.
Right.
But we'll work in conjunction with them. We have a great relationship with our governments and our first responders. So certainly through the COVID pandemic, I've developed a really good relationship with the health department and Miss Bethel there at the health department. And I want to publicly compliment them. I think they have been very open with Muhlenberg County and have really fit that role of the protector of public health. So
I know Judge McGee was very appreciative of the information that
I
he
believe
received
we're
from them.
very fortunate in Muhlenberg County to have the leadership that we have in this moment and that public health leadership that we have. We're in a really good position with leadership and folks that are directing decisions. Certainly they're under some very extreme conditions right now. Not only with the pandemic, but what it's done to our economy, what it's done to right now they're in the middle of budgeting for our local governments. That certainly has taken its toll, because estimating those tax revenues going forward, which are dependent upon the economy and people's ability to pay their property taxes and their ability to pay their vehicle taxes, that takes an impact.
And you're normally at every fiscal court meeting.
I try
And
to.
Here lately, have you still been able to go, even with COVID, with them doing the Zoom
Well,
meetings? And
most everyone has been doing the teleconferencing or Zoom.
right.
Fiscal court has been going live on Facebook. So technology has kind of been a game changer, and there is some question as to just how much of this changes our society as we go forward. I think that some companies have found folks working from home has worked just fine. The less people you have in your office, the fewer lights you have on, the fewer desks you need, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Right.
So I think nationally, and probably even locally, we're going to see some changes in how people work. Personally, I have changed the way I do my job. With the teleconferencing and the Zoom, been doing some things that way. But as well, I've been working as much as I can from home. As long as you have internet access and a computer in this business and a phone, you can get your job done. And that's the way it's been across Kentucky and across the nation with media outlets.
Yeah.
So, I've even, and in the past, I've even done my job from sitting at a ski resort in Vail, Colorado and editing a paper.
Yeah.
So you
I
can
like
be
that,
you can be
too,
flexible.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
I hated it. I'm not a cold weather guy, so I was happy to sit in the cabin and do work.
Right.
So,
So much of what we do here is based on the live experience and
Yes.
and people together and coming
Yeah.
coming together as a group to do that. So we're trying to find different ways, this being a prime example, to keep people engaged. And,
well, even the arts community
Yeah.
has been very innovative in this time. I mean, I've watched plenty of concerts and
yeah.
some monologues and things like that online.
We've
So,
started filming some here.
Yeah.
Right.
Started yesterday. So
Great.
we're all finding, I think, new ways to keep people involved
Mm-hmm.
and engaged. But we do look forward to the day when we have a house full again.
Certainly. I'm getting a little stir crazy, cabin fever, whatever you might call
Right.
it.
Right.
I certainly enjoy my home there in Central City, but I miss my friends. I miss seeing you guys. I would never say I miss going to a government meeting, but I miss our leadership, and
Yeah.
I miss being able to interact with them.
Right.
So
Well, we've both said that our yards have never looked better.
that's right.
So we've,
That's right. I think cars and yards have never looked cleaner or more trimmed.
and
I
houses,
can't say that about my car, but maybe the
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
houses have never been, more projects have never been done, I don't think.
Yeah,
Right.
a lot of refrigerators been swept under these days.
You mentioned your home in Central City. You
Mm-hmm.
just recently moved. Is that
Yeah, yes, I did. I bought a home in Central City back in February. We're still, as everyone knows, when you move, whether you bought that home or you're renting, it takes a while to get everything together. So as you mentioned, the yard, I've been spending a lot of time outside cleaning up the property and taking care of those things that need to be taken care of outside. And when you're home a lot and you're walking around, you say, oh, I didn't notice that when I bought it. So,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of little things that you need to take care of at home.
The list keeps getting
The
longer
list
and longer.
grows.
Yeah.
The list grows.
Well, welcome to the neighborhood. I
Well,
guess.
thank you.
And you've been at Leader News how long now?
5 years.
5 years?
The Tuesday after Memorial Day was my 5th year anniversary. Muhlenberg County's been very good to me. I kind of feel like I have 3 home counties. I grew up between Dunmore and Lewisburg on 431. I had family that lived on Forgy Mill Road just outside of Dunmore
right.
growing up. All of my people are from Butler County, so I kind of feel like Logan, Muhlenberg, Butler are my home counties. I have family here in Muhlenberg, so actually Samuel Buchanan, one of your
Yeah.
Yeah. great
Yeah.
actors, is my cousin's son. So
He's a
he
good
and I,
man, Charlie Brown.
he
He's a
and
good
I
man,
kind
Charlie
of
Brown.
he and I kind of
Exactly.
share the acting bug a little bit. So I've been very impressed with him. But yeah, Muhlenberg's been great, and I have a lot of friends here, and really enjoy my work here.
You said 29 years, right?
29 years.
29 years. When did you know that that's what you wanted to do, and how did you get started?
Well, it was kind of a strange thing, TJ. I joined the National Guard when I was in high school, and that was
Thank you.
well, you're welcome. I think I got more out of them than they ever got out of me. But I was in the National Guard in high school, went to armor school, was on a tank for a while, got trained on M60A3. Decided I wanted some more of that. I wanted to do it full time, so I walk into a recruiter's office, talk to my commander at my National Guard unit in Russellville. He explained the process that the National Guard would have to release me, and a lot of paperwork involved there. Anything government, always paperwork. Walked into a recruiter's office in Bowling Green, had every intention of joining the Air Force. Army recruiter grabbed me, as I was going down the hallway, because they, in the order of founding of the services, that's how they have their offices, so the Army's first.
Wow.
And he grabbed me and said, come in here and talk to me, young man. And I explained to him that I was qualified on a tank, and I said, I do not want to be on tanks. I don't like mud, and I don't like being cold. And he said, well, let's see what you've got. And I was fortunate enough, I qualified for any job I wanted in the Army. And he said, well, here's something I've never recruited anyone for. And I said, what's that? And he said, Steel Documentation Specialist. I went, what is that? He said, well, it's a photographer. So I'm like, yes, I want that. So signed the contract to become a photographer in the Army. They sent me to Colorado, trained me as a photojournalist, studio photography, crime scene documentation, aircraft and accident documentation. So spent some time doing that. Got out of the Army in '94 and went right to work for my hometown newspaper in Russellville. I certainly had more opportunities becoming a photographer and being trained as a photographer than I ever would as a tanker coming out of the Army as a tank driver, you know.
I guess you could
So-
be on the monster truck circuit or something.
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
At that point, you'd be-
Kim Bard could probably give me a couple
Right.
of pointers there, but no, there's nothing like driving a tank. I mean, it's certainly one of my favorite memories of my life. It's a lot of fun, and certainly with Wendell Ford right down the way, has a great history of armor here in Muhlenberg County. Armor is kind of the military legacy here in Kentucky with Fort Knox and General Patton and all of that. So very proud of my service, but mainly because it gave me opportunities to come out and do something that I never considered. I was a writer in school.
I was going to say, were you involved in journalism or?
I did some writing, but it was more on the creative side. Some people would still say that I write fiction, but
No.
but you know, it's been a very rewarding life. I've gotten to know people that I wouldn't have otherwise. In this journalism endeavor, you kind of have to become an amateur expert at a lot of things. So fortunately for me, I do understand how budgeting works, and I can read a government budget. It's not always exciting, but it's important. but I'm able to have good relationships with the arts and entertainment field, the law enforcement. I understand what these men and women go through. I understand how the courthouse works, so it's rewarding.
You were joking, saying people may still think you write fiction
That's
or
right.
whatever, but for me, I've always found your reporting to be straight up. I mean, it
Thank
is
you.
what it is, and it doesn't seem
Thank
to be
you.
skewed one way or the other. And from personal experience, because I've been the subject of a couple of articles
Yes.
with the fiscal court, and one entity was not so nice and a little bit untrue, and then yours
Yeah.
was the exact opposite.
Well, thank you, TJ.
No, I really appreciate it.
Well-
So did you get that in your training? Did the Army instill that in you, or was that just something that
Certainly, that's an interesting question, and I've thought about it from time to time. Like,
because in today's world, it's
had-
not that way.
I had some very good folks in my military career that guided me. And here's an interesting thing. When I started out as a photographer, we used film. While I was in photography school, Nikon was developing their first digital camera, and we were able to test that. Photoshop had just become a thing. I think Photoshop 1.0 was out, and we were playing with that in school. Even in 1991, we were discussing, now I'm dating myself a little bit, but even in 1991, we were discussing the ethics of digital photos and photo manipulation, and that when you change an image, it ceases to be the truth.
Right.
Well, we just saw that one of the major news networks this week got into hot water for sharing a digitally altered photo from a protest. And they made it look like something that it was not. They then came back and said, well, that was a collage. It was a photo illustration. Well, in this business, if you manipulate that image, you must say it's an illustration. It ceases to become journalism at that point. But those military values of honesty, which the root word there is honor, being true to yourself and those who are depending upon you. And you know, the Andy Anderson Corporation may sign my checks, but I work for Mecklenburg County. I also live here. So I'm not hard to guy to find. So if I make a mistake, I'm going to own up to that. And just this week, we clarified an article that we had that was maybe not as clear as it needed to be. I'm always happy to correct a story or clarify. That's the only way I maintain my credibility. But I also try to place myself in your shoes. What if that were me that had been arrested? What if that were me that was on the front page for a major crime event? I want to treat people with respect, no matter who they are. I certainly have my own personal views about the things that occur in our
Right.
society and in our community, but I can't let that get in the way. And I've always tried to put myself right there in the middle, be that objective voice, that person that's observing what's happening, using all my senses and coming out with that story.
NPR had a thing on last week discussing this very thing about putting oneself into the article that they're writing, and that was the point they
Yes.
brought up. Is like you have to imagine yourself in that person's shoes too,
That's right.
because it's very hard to keep yourself out of anything, because you choose the headlines, you choose
Yes.
the content, and naturally it comes out that way. So it's
Well,
a lot of
yeah.
work, isn't it?
The thing is, folks may not always be happy with what we
Right.
report, what we choose to report, but we do the best we can. And we're a small staff, and when I say small staff, about as small as you can get, one.
We can relate to that.
You know, I'm a staff of one,
Right.
and you have to be flexible, and you have to maintain those good relationships, because if I make a mistake with TJ one time, TJ remembers that. So the next time I come to you and I need a quote or something, you're going to be hesitant to do that. But you know, it's all about news judgment. And I had some very good people, not only in my military career, but early when I was a young reporter. And I didn't go to journalism school. I was taught on the job,
Yeah.
which I think that's sometimes the best way to learn, because you make those mistakes and you never forget it. Typos or inattention to detail, learning how to spell names and places. And
Yeah.
yeah. Folks get very upset when you misspell their name.
Right.
I think I ran into that with Mr. Davis one time, but you know, Robbie has a million different spellings, as I found out. But no, you just have to maintain that even keel and be professional.
We're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more with Josh Givens in just a second. Welcome back to 6 Feet Apart with Sean and TJ. We're here again with the editor.
Yes.
Editor-in-chief. What's your hail to the chief? What did we just?
Just plain editor.
Just the plain editor.
The
Okay.
plain old editor.
The Leader News, Josh Givens. And again, we want to thank our sponsors for all they've done for us here at Felix C. Martin Junior Hall over the years. If there's somebody that you'd like to have us talk with on the show, please reach out at info@felixmartinhall.org. Let us know what you think. Let us know who you're interested in. And if you have any questions for some of our previous guests, be able to get them back around for another round and see what's going on in their worlds a little more recently. So we were talking about your career in journalism and where that's taken you. And,
Yes.
and it's taken you all the way to Central City and Muhlenberg County.
All the way to Central
so,
City.
There's really nowhere else to go from there.
It's taken me about 35 miles up the road from where I grew up.
From where you started. So in a rather roundabout way, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
The places you will go.
Exactly.
Right.
You mentioned earlier your cousin Sam and his
Yes.
acting
Yeah.
endeavors, and you've had some of your own. I
yeah,
recall
I've,
keeping up with some of your film exploits a few years ago.
Yeah, I have a friend in Bardstown where I was the sports editor for a couple of years back in the early 2000s, actually 9/11 and all that period, a guy named John Coulter. And we had a television station that our newspaper owned. I would do a sports show about 3 times a week, and John was our studio director. He had also attended a film school, Full Sail Film School, I believe, down in Florida. And John would do documentaries and some dramatic historical reenactment films, that sort of thing. John left that position and began his own film company. He contacted me roughly 6-7 years ago and asked me if I'd be interested in doing a short film with him. That one was called The Miller's Wife. He is much like my newsroom. He is a small operation, so that is still in post-production. But then we started another film called The Private, and folks can find that page on Facebook. There are some clips and some photos and things of that nature. It's currently in production. COVID has kind of stopped filming those final scenes, but it is a Civil War film.
What's the Facebook page?
It's just called The Private.
Okay.
And it's a story about a young woman who disguises her gender and throws on a uniform with a Confederate unit, and just kind of her experiences and struggles with this ragtag unit that just kind of comes together when they get separated on the battlefield. I play a very cantankerous troublemaker. It may not be a big stretch, but
Stereotyping, I think.
Typecasting?
But
Typecasting.
I play a soldier that he's not the guy you want to hang out with in camp, but you probably want him beside you when things get bad. Also, I've done a few music videos for some buddies of mine. That's been a lot of fun. I've kind of run the whole gamut. I've played a murderer, a preacher, and a funeral director in 3 music videos. So, you know,
It's full service, right? there.
it's full service, but it's always been fun, and it's just something I kind of do. I'd always been interested in it, but had no idea how to get into it. Thankfully, with filmmaking, it used to be you either did it in New York or you did it in LA. Now it's everywhere.
Right.
You know, Atlanta in many ways is the television capital of the United States now.
Right.
I have buddies in Atlanta that have appeared on The Walking Dead. These are folks that grew up in Lewisburg, Kentucky, and had their head blown off on The Walking Dead. So I think that's pretty cool.
That looks good on a resume.
It does.
So,
And so I've just been really impressed with how far filmmaking has come in Kentucky. And it's still kind of it's in its infancy in many ways, but we're growing. I think if they would loosen up some of those tax credits that Atlanta and Georgia has done so well with, we'd see it grow here in Kentucky.
Yeah. I mean, you can even shoot a local talk show.
Evidently.
Or
Well, and
Try
that's
to
what
anyway.
we touched on the digital camera earlier, and how digital cameras revolutionized photography. It used to be that to be a photographer, you needed a couple $1,000s and needed to know how to operate a single lens reflex camera, a fancy camera, as some people say. Now we all have cameras in our pockets.
Right.
We all have a video camera in our pocket. So things like TikTok has been like kind of crazy to me. Certainly with COVID, you have a little bit more time on your hands, and some of these people on TikTok just crack me up.
Matt Perkins,
the stuff that come
for
up.
instance.
What's that?
Matt Perkins, for instance. He's a TikTok.
But but the technology has just kind of changed how folks make entertainment. YouTube, I mean, who would have ever thought YouTube would be what it is today?
Yep.
I mean, that's where your show is, and there's countless other shows. I mean, legit shows, entertainment. So,
a lot more, almost as good as we are.
Almost.
almost.
I know you're a big music fan.
Yes.
A collector of fine vinyl. What's the latest thing in your arsenal?
What I've been listening to lately. Now this was kind of nostalgia. I kind of squealed like a kid when I found it. I'm gonna give a plug to Angie down at Attic Heirlooms in Greenville. She's one of my friends, and I'm a junk. I like to dig in junk and antiques and stuff. So I was down at Angie's store a couple weeks ago digging through some records that she had just picked up, and a sealed copy of the Ghostbusters soundtrack
No
from
kidding.
1984.
Oh,
Very excited about that because a Ghostbusters cassette was the very first music I spent my own money on. And
Talk about coming full circle.
Yeah,
Right.
so I was pretty excited to find that.
Now you
and
got it on
and
vinyl.
yes, I did open it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not one of these to buy records and just set them on the shelf and let them sit there. I like to listen to them.
Yeah.
But kind of been listening to that lately. Flat and Scruggs, Nine Inch Nails. I'm all over the place,
Yeah.
guys. I'm all over the place.
Oh yeah, I know. When I follow your Facebook posts on their latest vinyl endeavor, it's
a collage.
you
Music-
never know where it's going.
You know, music, I play a little bit guitar terribly. But music is something that I enjoy. I grew up with two younger brothers. We lived out in the country, basically in the middle of nowhere. So music was a big thing for us. My mother, my late mother, had a small vinyl collection, but we grew up around records, and my mom, Saturday mornings, the music came on at 8 a.m. and it was time to eat your cereal and clean the house. And we cleaned the house to Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and the Beach Boys. And so I credit my mother and living out in the middle of nowhere for my love of music, because that was our thing. And
yeah.
when you get into middle school and high school, and our friends, would make mixtapes, and you would trade tapes and that sort of thing. And then it became burning CDs and illegally downloading music. Yes, I'm guilty. I think all three of us are probably guilty of that.
Yeah.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. That's right. I don't think they're too concerned about what I did 15 years ago on LimeWire, but
Right.
But I was the same way with music, though. I mean, my vinyl collection comes from Dad.
Yeah.
What little I had, but it's anywhere from Rod Stewart to Black Oak, Arkansas.
that's right.
And so that's what I grew up listening to as well. And it was
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of times at night he had the stereo up, and that's
Yeah.
what we did.
Well, my love of music, my introduction to music kind of started there in the so-called outlaw country and Loretta Lynn, George Jones. My grandmother was a huge George Jones fan. So if you went to grandma's house, granny's house, you're going to hear George Jones. My grandfather was a musician from here in Muhlenberg County, a gentleman named Melbourne Latham. He could play basically anything with strings on it. He died when I was 12. Had I been a smarter kid, I would have gone to him and kind of learned,
Yeah.
picked his brain a little bit. Because, I mean, he was picking and grinning with these guys beginning in the 50s. So, that southern part of Muhlenberg County, I don't think there's many people he didn't play with.
Did he play with Wilson Parham, maybe? Some of it, you know?
I don't know that. I
was
don't
my
know that he
granddad.
ever
played
did. He was in a band with a guy named Jack Hunt for a while. I think what do they call themselves? The Kentucky Playboys. And trust me, they were. But yeah, I do
That was going to
radio.
be the name of this show.
Yeah.
But, we didn't want to get into it.
I do radio up at WRUS down in Russellville about once a month. Do the feedback show with Don Neagle, and in their lobby there's a picture, black and white photo that I have to check out every time I go in there, and it's my grandfather, 1953. I believe it's 53, with the Kentucky Playboys outside the studio, getting ready to go in and play live on air. So.
Wow.
The first time I went into the studio and I'm looking at the stuff they have in their display case, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think that's Pepa. Yeah. About 6'5", holding up a
Upright
bass that
bass.
he's
Upright
taller than.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of
pretty
fun.
good.
We have a lot of pictures of my grandfather playing music back in the day. And so I came from a music-loving family. There's just very few of us that have any musical talent. So.
I'm good at playing the record. I push play. I don't necessarily play
Air
anything.
guitar.
Yeah.
Come
Rock-
from
Oh,
line
I'm
of
an
air
air
Rocks and air
guitar
guitar.
virtuoso.
It was a lot more effective when I had hair.
That's right.
Not so much anymore.
That's right.
You talked about digital camera, and we all have that in our pockets or,
Yes.
or close at hand now. We'll talk a little bit. We'll wrap up with the impact that's had on news, and also where we're going. You think within the world of COVID and beyond with the news.
Well, certainly digital cameras and everyone having that camera in their pocket has changed the information and news field in ways that I don't think we ever imagined it would. You take the situations that are going on with the people who have unfortunately lost their lives in encounters with law enforcement. Those are certainly it's not something that happens every day, but it seems like we think like it's happening every day. The reason for that is folks have cameras now. And when those incidents happen, they record them, and before you know it, it's out to 100 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly changed not only the news industry, but it's changed how society kind of governs itself, and society decides what's important and what isn't. So that's been a very interesting thing to me, and I think we're still evolving on that. I don't see our society going backwards on that at all. I think it's going to become much more common, which also gives you a responsibility as a human being that when you're out in public, act like a decent human being, or you might be recorded. Now, just think about the people that have lost their jobs, lost their livelihood because of an outburst, or losing their temper, or saying things that are just, let's be honest, socially unacceptable.
Yeah, was it the CFO at Chick-fil-A, or was it that?
There's quite a few
one time?
people that are in very public jobs, very important jobs, high-paying jobs, that now find themselves unemployed because someone recorded them. That in turn becomes news. But as well, at the Leader News, what we experience there, many times folks will message me on Facebook or just cold email me and say, hey, I was at this event, took a picture. Here's a photo if you'd like to use it. So you have, it's kind of elevated citizen journalism a little bit, what I like to refer as citizen journalism. And as well, social media. You look at the way social media impacts. Many newspapers are suffering because of not only the internet, but social media, because people tend to get their news from that Facebook feed or Instagram or even Twitter.
Right.
And which is not always a good thing.
Not always a good thing. I mean, here in Kentucky, we even have a law that says if you post something on Facebook, that's basically, it's like, don't report something before the police confirm it.
Right.
And that's what keeps me honest as a journalist. I have to go with those official sources.
Yeah.
Let me back up there. I don't believe it's a law. It's been proposed. It will come back. It will come. It was not approved, but it will come back.
Okay.
There are states out there that have laws that if you post, say someone's killed in a fatal car crash, and you post that photo or the names of those people before law enforcement finishes their initial investigation, you can be charged with a crime.
That's not information that I
It's
would
not,
want.
it's not altogether, I don't
Right.
think it's altogether constitutional on the First Amendment side, but some states have attempted to curtail that behavior.
Well, just common decency. I don't think that's necessarily something that
I don't,
I wouldn't personally want to be putting that out there. So
I won't, if I go to a scene, even like, let's say a house fire, if I go to a scene and someone's home is on fire, I try to find that person first and make sure they're okay before I ever post anything on Facebook. Fatal accidents, sure, I'm out there with my camera and my phone. None of that, the lens cap does not come off, the phone does not come out of my pocket until I make contact with that law enforcement officer in charge and find out what's going on.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't want to
that-
be the guy that someone finds out their loved one has lost their life or been seriously injured because I posted something.
right.
I'm not sure that the First Amendment was as beautiful as it is. Had the idea that we would all have the ability to do just what we're talking
No,
about.
I don't believe
And
any
we
of this
would-
was anticipated.
Yeah, we would be in the ethical, situation that the
Yeah.
world's in when it comes to those things. So there's,
I mean, I think they get a lot of credit for the gift of foresight, but maybe not quite that
right.
that
Yes.
advanced.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's always, especially in journalism, there's always that rush to be first, to get the scoop. Well, I think that's true on social media as well.
Oh, yeah.
Folks want to be that first one.
yeah.
I don't really have a concern about being first. I want to be right. I want to be correct. That's what keeps us in business, and that's what keeps me with what respect I have earned in this business. No, I know some journalists, some editors will walk into a place and they're like, "Don't you know who I am?" I don't expect anyone to know who I am. What I expect is that I earn their trust. I think that's why I've got 29 years in when other folks have not lasted.
Yeah, I mean, being right and being correct is what keeps you honest. It also is what keeps the people and the entities that you're reporting on honest too, because freedom of the press is vital into this country in the way that it's
absolutely
designed.
vital.
It is, you got to have it.
Where
You got to have it.
many times, whether the reference to the fourth estate is journalism. We are the unofficial fourth branch of government. We're the ones with the resources and the time to break down that fiscal court budget and tell you what's going on. Certainly, we all have the right to go to the courthouse and get a copy of the budget. But most people don't want to do that.
Right.
That's my job to do that. And it's my job to talk to those folks that are in positions of leadership and kind of break down what we feel are the important issues facing the community. And certainly with the school board meeting tonight, and folks are curious about the beginning of school, how that's going to look. Well, right now, folks are looking not only to the school board, but also to the Leader News to some extent to let them know, hey, what's the future hold? And I believe Muhlenberg County is very fortunate to have the Leader News here. There are communities in our state right now that don't have a newspaper inside their borders any longer. Kentucky journalism's lost 6 newspapers through this COVID pandemic because of changes in the economy. So 6 newspapers in Kentucky that were operating 5-6 weeks ago are gone.
Wow.
That's serious business. Because when the newspaper goes, I think that takes away kind of that watchdog status in your community. And when folks aren't watching the hen house, sometimes foxes will play.
Yeah. Where do you think we're going with the news, and once we get past the current COVID situation,
Yeah.
or during it and then beyond?
Well, one of the first things I would say is I know that a lot of small businesses have suffered in Muhlenberg County and across our country. Some of those businesses right here in Muhlenberg will not open again. Some have already closed their doors. Newspapers across the country have closed their doors. The Leader News, we are a business just like everyone else. Certainly our mission is a little bit different. We don't have a product necessarily that folks would call tangible, because our paper comes out on Tuesday. By the next Tuesday, it's lying in a bird cage. So, but I feel like what we offer is very important. And certainly I want to go on record by saying I appreciate the support that the community has given the Leader News during this crisis. I would hope they continue to support us, because that's how you lose your newspaper, is folks not supporting you. And I know that we're not agreed with all the time, and I don't expect us to be agreed with. I don't want to live in a society where everyone agrees with Josh Gibbons all the time.
Okay.
It'd be a very boring place to be. But we appreciate the support of the community. Now, that being said, going forward, for the news landscape in the United States and Kentucky as well, I think you're going to see more and more going to online only. The Glasgow Daily News, which had been publishing in Barron County for 80-something years as a daily newspaper, they're now online only. That costs jobs, that costs taxes, because now you have fewer people working in that facility, so now they're not paying those occupational taxes and that sort of thing. So I've been hearing the death of newspapers for 20 years. It's the longest obituary in history. It's the longest obituary in history. So certainly we've been struggling against internet and that sort of thing for a long time. Print's still here.
Yeah.
We still have one of the few presses in the Commonwealth of Kentucky that's operating right in Central City, and I think that's a pretty big deal. We still print our own newspaper. We're independently owned. We're a family company. So that's few and far between.
So don't trust everything in your Facebook feed or Twitter feed. Read your newspaper, right?
But the thing I suggest to folks, TJ, is don't read just one source.
Yeah.
I'm reading 4 and 5 sources a day. If there's a story out there that I want to know about, I want to see what everyone's saying about it. We're not telling you what to think. We're just giving you the information for you to decide for yourself. If I'm ever telling you what to think on the front page, I have not done my job. And I caution people about always looking at stuff they agree with, because that puts you in with tunnel vision, and I think it's gonna cost you in the long run. You're not gonna be as informed. You're gonna miss out on some things that are important to your life. And I just encourage people, find a few sources that you trust, a couple that you don't trust, and read them every day. There's nothing scary about reading.
No.
You're gonna come away with it a little bit better informed and a little more well-rounded by reading.
Yeah, because what's interesting on your feed that you're scrolling through, whether it be Google or whatever, the three of us could probably Google the exact same thing, and we would get 3 different results that come up in
Absolutely.
our feed. It's all based on what we normally look at. So
Yeah.
that's the scariest thing to me, because you're not getting any different point of views or looking at things from different perspectives. It's all what Google or whatever thinks your perspective is, so you're going to get that and
Absolutely.
not anything unbiased.
So many of us, myself included, we don't watch or read or listen to things for information anymore. We just try and find what's going to reinforce what we already think.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
we either want to be reinforced or be entertained. And
Or both.
that
Yeah.
how those, we were talking about Ghostbusters, how those streams cross. with information and entertainment has been a very interesting thing. They always say, don't cross the streams. And it's dangerous when you're trying to be entertained by your so-called news. And the so-called conservative and the left organizations, they're both guilty of it. They're both guilty of it. You mentioned NPR earlier. If you're only going to read one source, I would say go to NPR, because they are as straight down the middle as I think you can be. They're objective. And some folks would disagree with that statement, but I think on a consistent basis, they present the most balanced news reporting that's out there today.
Or just watch C-SPAN.
Or C-SPAN. Let their own words speak for it.
Right.
There's no commentary. It's just there.
Right.
I get emails from the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, from time to time. It's interesting to read his comments from the Senate floor without Fox News or CNN responding to it, because they both get it wrong. I don't always agree with the Majority Leader. I very rarely agree with him. But I do understand his position, and what he says is important, because he is directing that body. Just because you don't agree with someone all the time doesn't mean what they're saying isn't important. So I just hold that mirror of the front page up every week and say, hey, this was Muhlenberg County the week prior. You decide. You decide.
I like that. Well, with that and a Ghostbusters reference in the last minute or so, I think that's probably,
That's right.
I don't know where else we can go. So, Josh, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
We,
have a lot of respect for you guys.
We
and-
hopefully
we
we'll be
do,
doing
and,
this for a while, even past the world of
Right.
COVID-19. So
Have a
we'd
lot
love
of
to have you
respect
back.
not only for what y'all do here at the hall, but I appreciate this effort of innovation, right?
Yeah.
You're doing it right here.
We do what we do.
Do what
Yeah.
we do.
All right.
Well, thank you guys.
Appreciate it. Come
Thank
back
you.
anytime.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk more vinyl.
Yes.
And maybe your movie will be done.
We could probably do 3 or 4 episodes just on
Just
vinyl
on that.
collection.
There you go. That's the after show.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Well, thanks again for spending part of your day with us here in this world of 6 feet apart.